as we speak, and you'll have seen it in the news, one of Mark's clients, Chris Brown, has barricaded himself in his home. I'm guessing, and I don't know what the dispute is over, and in the time that we're talking to you right now, that is as much as we know. Nothing has changed past that.
Correct. Which if you turn into notorious, somebody's going to say, really, does Geragos have his clients just going out there and trying to imitate for the pilot episode? But no, but that's one of the crazy things about the practice is you actually never know. You can get awakened like I was this morning in the middle of the night with a officer calling and saying, Mark, we got an issue. And so...
how do they know to call you? Does he tell them to call you, or are you on speed dial in terms of clients?
Well, there are certain clients and certain detectives I've dealt with. You know, I've been doing this for 35 years, so I guess they generally know who I represent, who I don't. And clients will usually tell them, but in this case, this was a detective I've dealt with before.
So were they going and serving a warrant, or were they going to tell them to turn the stereo down?
Well, I think it's a stereo down that started, or that's what started. It's still unclear. We'll know shortly. But then, one thing leads to another. And unfortunately, when you're high profile or you're somebody who's in the public eye, all of a sudden you get a whole lot more attention than you would otherwise. I mean, if they literally, we'll see how it all plays out.
Well, I'm guessing the only advice you give to a client is comply with whoever's there at the time, because that's about all they can do.
Most of my clients are pretty savvy about that. I mean, I tell them, look, you're not. Most of the clients understand you're not going to talk your way out of something. I mean, that just isn't the case. So it's always better to be compliant. That's kind of a given, and don't start asserting all of your rights, but just hand the phone to the officer and say, "Here's my lawyer," and call me. That's what I'm there for.
Did you speak to Chris?
Yeah.
And did you tell him? Well,
I wish I could tell you that, but it's attorney-client.
Right.
But I will assure you that by the time this airs, we will have sorted it out one way or another.
So, is the...
I've talked about this before with you. I've been representing Chris for, 8 years or so, and have developed kind of a avuncular uncle-nephew type relationship. I mean, as he's grown up and gone through all these things, I've been through quite a few with him, there is a certain father-son, uncle-nephew style relationship. So it would not be the standard. My conversations with him, and I'm not speaking out of school, would not be the standard attorney-client type conversations. They're a little bit more paternal without the negative or pejorative connotations of that. And then what they do for warrants, or what the cops do for warrants, is they secure a location that they want to search. Nobody can go in or out of the location unless they're escorted by the cops. And in the interim, they write a probable cause affidavit, which is fancy term for, hey, judge, this is why I think I've got a reason to go into this house, and you need to sign a search warrant so I can go in there. That usually takes a couple hours, and then they'll go in.
What if the judge
says no?
Yeah, and I mean, it never happens. But what if they just say no? Do the cops just have to pack up and go home?
Yeah, but that never happens, because then they'll shop it, and you never know.
They'll go find another judge.
They'll find another judge. And she's now dead, and I won't mention her name because I don't like to speak ill of the dead. But my friend Harlan Braun used to have what he called a designated search warrant whore motion. And the designated search warrant whore motion was this judge who used to get tanked at lunch would come back in the afternoon and be at about a .20, and the cops all knew this, and they would come in there with their probable cause affidavits, and they get their search warrants signed by her. And so Harlan used to challenge her search warrants that she was a designated search warrant whore,
right,
and that she was not exercising her judicial discretion, and he would do what's called a 1538.5, which is a motion to suppress, where he would challenge the unbiased nature of the judge. As you can imagine, she was never really receptive to these motions.
When Mark delivered this same speech at her eulogy, there was not a dry eye in the house. Now, some criticized Mark for taking a turn toward the professional and critical, but it was all part of the beautiful mosaic that was Judge Weinstein. So I think that was At first, I thought it was a little inappropriate.
But then you understood that was part of the mosaic of her life.
That's, that's right. I do understand why the kids were upset. I do understand that part, and I can't blame them. So now, would you say to Chris, surrender yourself, or would you say to Chris, wait around until they get a warrant?
No, you would never. There's nothing to surrender to unless they've got a warrant. So unless they've got a warrant, you don't do anything. And that's something that goes for. It's very rare when you're going to go in and advise a client to talk to the cops. I've done that, but I've done that specifically.
So does it look better though overall, whenever the case is being made, that the person surrendered voluntarily versus waited for the warrant?
No, because generally you can't get into that because you've got a right. You've got a right to be free from harassment or search or seizure.
So the process will unfold this way. They will take the next hour or so. They'll get a warrant. Then when they get a warrant, they'll be able to go in there and take custody of Chris
Correct.
Brown. And presumably you will then get into your car and go meet them at the station.
At the station, get them bailed out, have my bail bondsman there, and go from there.
What do you think the bail might be?
I don't know. That's a good question. It shouldn't be more than $50,000, but you want to, I for an over and under, but I will bet you it's the over.
Over because of priors?
Because of who he is, and it's high profile, and people generally, there something about high profile cases tends to freeze the criminal justice system. Everything it's that old expression about you don't want to watch the sausage being made.
Right.
It's the same thing with the criminal justice system.
Do they want to grandstand a little bit?
There's always that.
Because if you went, set the bail at $5,500, everyone would go, what the hell?
Yeah,
oh, it's because
he
he's a
spends that
celebrity.
on bottle service.
Right.
Exactly.
So they put a big number out there, and the people, the have-nots, feel satiated somehow.
Right. It's kind of like at the Coliseum. We have the same deal.
Now, will you give him a talking to about parties, friends, associates, people he should be hanging around with versus not hanging around, doing wheelies on ATVs and things like that?
I don't know much, and it'll be interesting to see what people say in this particular situation. I've had the experience at least 10 times over, unfortunately, and this is kind of takes us full circle back. Unfortunately, for a lot of these guys who have kind of this wealth and celebrity at a very early age, they become targets. And so it would not surprise me. I can think back to a case he had in Vegas, same thing, that he was the target. Somebody was making false accusations. We were able to prove it. So I'm always reticent to rush to any kind of conclusion until I do some kind of investigation.